Hi everyone, this is Donny Lowy from Closeout Hope you're doing well. I have a wholesale business here in New York. The next time you come to New York, you're welcome to visit my warehouse. If you have any family or friends in New York, you can send them to the warehouse. And you can always visit the website, Closeout So today I'd like to discuss with you how to buy wholesale clothes in the USA. There are many ways that you can do it. For starters, you could go online. You can use wholesale search engines such as wholesalecentral.com, Top 10 Wholesale, Closeout Central, and you could look for a list of wholesalers. You can also go on Google and find a list of wholesalers. Once you find those wholesalers, you call them up, send them an email, find out which of those wholesalers is set up to sell to outside of the United States, and then you could start importing from that wholesaler. Now, many wholesalers will be willing to sell to retailers outside the United States, but you want to deal with wholesalers that have actually done so and have the experience to sell the merchandise and to send the merchandise to outside of the United States. The reason is because you want them to recommend a shipping company, or unless you're going to arrange your own shipping, which is fine, you want them to be familiar with the type of clothing that is going to be popular in your market, and the prices that you need to pay, and so on. So now I want to give you a few different ideas on how you can buy wholesale clothing. So the more traditional one is what we mentioned. You can find wholesalers and buy from them. Another way that you can do it is you can contact factories in the United States that make clothing, and there are still factories that either make clothing or factories that will, I would say, modify the clothing, whether it's the sewing of the clothing, whether it's fixing clothing, alterations, and so on. You can contact those factories, find out what closeouts they have available, and then make a deal with them to buy those closeouts and have them sent to your country. And of course, you're going to do this if the clothing from that factory meets the specifications of your country. Now, let's say there's a factory that makes clothing in the United States. They might also have slightly irregular merchandise. Depending on the irregularity of that merchandise, it might be fine for you, and you might be willing to buy that clothing. Let's say the irregularity is that the pattern wasn't perfectly aligned on the clothing. And your customers really are not going to mind, and they might not even notice it. But let's say the department store in the United States that was going to buy that clothing is very specific that everything has to be 100% perfect. So it's a good thing for the department store. They want to make sure the clothing is perfect. But for people, it really might not matter whether the pattern is slightly, to the right, or it's centered, or slightly to the left, right? So if your customers are okay with it, then you could buy that slightly irregular merchandise at a discount to the regular wholesale price and bring it to your country. You can also find out if the factory has any canceled orders. And if the factory has canceled orders, meaning an order was placed by a retailer and the retailer didn't pay for the order or left a deposit and then make the full payment, and now the factory has that merchandise. If they've gotten a deposit for it, then they've covered some of their costs. You should be able to get a pretty low price on it. And if they haven't paid for it at all, then you can negotiate with the factory, and they might be happy just to have someone to sell that merchandise to. Another way to buy wholesale clothing in the USA is to contact American brands and make a deal with them to buy merchandise for your market. You might discover that the brands already have a distributor who represents them in your country. So in that case, you're going to have to go through the distributor, but find out if they have any closeouts that do not have to be bought through the distributor. For example, let's say call Tahari, and Tahari has a distributor in your country, and all of the latest fashions have to be bought through that distributor. But ask Tahari if they have any clothing from a previous season. That clothing that's sitting in their warehouse, let's say in New York, that clothing isn't being sold through the distributor because it's sitting in the warehouse in New York and it's from a previous season. So you're going to ask Tahari if you can buy that clothing from them at a discount. And it might be worthwhile to do it because even though the clothing's from a previous season, if your customers are okay with clothing from a previous season, you're going to be able to buy that at a lower wholesale price than the clothing from the latest season, so that'll give you an opportunity to save money and to make money from that clothing. Sorry. Another thing that you can do is you can also go to retailers in the United States and find out if they have any closeouts that they're not able to sell. So what do I mean by that? Let's say you go to a retailer, whether it's a an individual boutique, or you go to a department store and you speak to the manager or the owner, and you find out what clothing do they have that they're not able to sell. You can make an offer for that clothing, and you can buy that clothing at a discount. You might even be able to pay less than they paid for the clothing because they're just happy to have someone buy that clothing from them. Then you pack it up and you have it sent to your country. You can also contact closeout wholesalers such as myself that deal with department store overstock, and you could buy overstock that is brand name because it's clothing that was originally bought by a department store, and since it's overstock, the department store wanted to recoup their money for it, and let's say they sold it at a below wholesale price, you might be able to buy it as well at a below wholesale price. In my warehouse, I sell a lot of department store overstock at below wholesale prices, so you can definitely come to my warehouse or you can order through my website. Another way to buy wholesale clothing in the USA is to visit the wholesale showrooms located in the different fashion districts and make deals with the showrooms. You can buy the clothing that they have, without negotiating. You can buy the latest offerings that they have, or you can also find out if they have any closeouts, any overstock, any surplus that they want to sell, and then you could buy that merchandise at a below wholesale price. Alright, my website is closeoutexplosion.com. I'd be very happy to meet you if you come to New York. Have a great day.